Sadiq Khan's secret plan to get cars off the street and force everybody into public transport has been revealed. Hello everyone, this is the Lois and Andre Climate Change Show on the Car 26 website. What on earth is Sadiq Khan up to?
I don't know what Sadiq Khan's up to, but apparently in Bristol, they're now actually getting rid of cars as well with no consultation to the public. They're just going to do a trial scheme where basically there could be no cars in the city centre. What about the people that live in the city centre?
And they always think that these city centres are museums. I've got to be honest with you. I used to work at City Hall under Ken Livingston's mayoralty. Now, don't worry, I worked for the London Assembly Conservatives. But what was amazing was when we bumped into people from Transport for London, they deliberately believed in creating traffic jams, because what they thought was if they create traffic jams, they'll be able to jack up the price of cars. Only a few cars will drive and everybody else will be pushed onto public transport. But of course, from a pollution point of view, that's terrible, because I mean, we had all those diesel cars that apparently to save the polar bears, but they were pumping out all sorts of carcinogens, weren't they?
They're absolutely ridiculous. And White Van Man, how exactly is he going to take his tools onto the underground? There was a thing recently, wasn't there, with LBC, and they actually had a delivery driver and a DIY guy trying to take his stuff onto the underground. They wouldn't let him take his paint on with him. You cannot be a White Van Man and be a plumber or be any kind of DIY person in London or any city centre using the underground or public transport. It just doesn't work, does it?
But Lois, why is Sadiq Khan, who's supposed to represent working class people, so obsessed with this green agenda? Is it just they don't care?
He doesn't represent working class people. He loathes working class people, absolutely loathes them. No, they don't want any commerce. Ultimately, you don't need cars if you're not going to have commerce, do you? You know, everyone walking around the utopia, maybe working a job online or whatever, or not, or just having universal basic income. Why does anyone need a van?
I know, it's just crazy.
What are they going to do, though, when their plumbing needs doing and somebody can't get in? There's already situations where certain people, handymen, won't go to certain areas because it's more expensive than others. It's just killing
I used to find it when I lived in central Windsor, which is nowhere near as bad as central London, but there was no
downtown Windsor.
Downtown Windsor. Oh, the hood. Wicked man. Wicked West Side. But the problem that we had was that you literally were in a position whereby there was no system for where a van would park if they came round to work on your property. Yeah, so there just wasn't a system.
So then you're going to have houses and flats falling into disrepair. So I really don't know what the long-term strategy is. Well, I do know what the long-term strategy is. It's that basically everyone's in little pods as well as 15-minute cities. But, you know, they still need to be repaired. The whole thing is just anti-business, anti-capitalist. The green agenda has absolutely nothing to say with the sake of the planet. I've said that before.
But the problem is it's hobby horse projects, isn't it? It's just this obsession with sort of the piety of all of it. Oh, by the way, congratulations to Justin Welby on being fined £500 and getting 3 points on his licence for speeding. I mean, he's a typical example, isn't he? Yeah. Of some guy's just utterly pious, but then he breaks the rules himself.
Well, the thing is, the rules are so ridiculous. If you've got people that have been driving on the same roads for absolutely decades, then suddenly it's 20 and not 30. You know, people are going to make mistakes. I think it is going to be actually older guys who are going to be kept on getting done for this over 20 mile an hour thing. I really do.
It really drives me bananas. Anyway, look, COP28 have been talking about putting more and more taxes onto oil and gas, despite allegations that they've been greenwashing. So effectively what happens is nowadays people buy all of this land that was never going to get built on anyway and say they've offset their carbon. Now, okay, I don't mind if Shell or BP or anybody else wants to buy a piece of property or a forest or whatever, but I mean, you know, it's pretty worthless. And also there's a potential risk on cost to the consumer.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, it's not a shock to anybody ever that, oh, hang on, we want more taxes. It's just, we need more taxes because of the green agenda. I mean, these are just variations on a theme, aren't they? Speeding, congestion, oil and gas. It's just literally taxing thin air. I think there's somebody sitting there, Machiavelli, stroking a cat thinking, we are literally making money out of thin air.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally, and everyone's going, I mean, honestly, I honestly think that is happening somewhere, maybe in an underground cave.
I met a client climate change person who said to me, she
Climate
said,
change
look, whatever they're called, so you're going to have to educate
he,
them.
her, no, them, him, yeah.
Them, him. I prefer it, by the way. But this person said to me, oh, you must get into this climate change thing. And I said, well, I just find it a bit, and she said to me genuinely, she said, oh, you'll make a lot of money.
Yeah.
She said, people are stupid. They'll pay for anything.
Really?
And she was one of the campaigners.
Well, there you go. But according to my sources, apparently the oil and gas industry made a decision about 20 years ago that even though they knew it was complete nonsense, the science that was being pushed, it's believed by some to be nonsense.
That's saving us from YouTube.
Other nonsense is available. They said, well, we can make a lot of money out of this. We can make money. This is the narrative now. This is where it's going. This is how we're going to make it look like we're offsetting it. It will only push the cost of our product, oil and gas, up. The need is going to be higher, not lower. So let's go for gold.
But I spotted that. I used to work in Morecambe. I spotted that there's a lot of the.
It sounds really glamorous. Was it glamorous?
Morecambe is Morecambe glamorous? Well, yes.
I've got a feeling it might not be.
No, yes, if you're from Essex, right? It's
is Morecambe one of those places where the girls walk around with like no coats on and stuff like that? Yeah, okay.
I mean, the definition of a homosexual in Morecambe is someone who owns a coat. But anyway,
but in Essex, girls don't walk anywhere, so you don't have those problems.
No, indeed, can't walk. Not in the morning. But anyhow, what we tended to find was those people that were producing gas wanted to get into the whole wind turbine thing because they knew wind turbines were a waste of time, and you needed more gas turbines the more wind turbines you had. You
need a constant gas supply. It makes our grid, which normally works perfectly well, intermittent, which pushes the price up of absolutely everything. Only works with subsidies because it's an absolute nonsense. If something can't thrive or live on its own without subsidies, then it's a complete nonsense idea, and none of these renewables can. You can't store it. You can't, to be honest, in very hot countries where electricity is required mainly for air conditioning, it's great because you get the sun and turn it into electricity straight away and it's used. Bingo. That's not the case here. It really isn't the case. No.
Okay, look, the Federal Reserve Governor, Christopher Waller, has said that there's no risk to the economy from all the climate change stuff that's going through. I can't believe that literally he cannot accept that the cost of energy going up is not doing any damage. I mean, Lois, how out of touch are these bankers?
Well, there's no risk to his personal economy.
Well, I'm sure. That's right.
Yeah, but how can they say that? Well, unless they think that the green economy, i.e. the heavily subsidised neo-Marxist economy that they're trying absolutely almost succeeding in creating is not at risk. But the traditional economic model that we've used for hundreds and hundreds of years, at the edge of the feudal system and people actually being traders and making money and paying taxes and things like that is at risk. But no, not the way he sees the world.
But what worries me is this: even if you are a big fan of this whole idea of carbon creating climate change and all this, and I've said previously to you that I'm not worried whether that's true or not, simply because I think actually new technology will reduce pollution anyway. But my point is this: I just worry whether these people are so zealous, so obsessive that actually they're incapable of recognising the damage that's done. I gave the example the other week of Tata Steel. Look, when Tata Steel shut down in Port Talbot, that was me moving to a green economy. Yeah. That was exporting your jobs. So when they talked about that, what do you think they were all about? Now, for the Federal Reserve and indeed the Bank of England to not be concerned about that just makes me think that they're badly out of touch.
Or that they don't see it as damage, they're not being industry and moving to a different economic model. That's the only thing that you can take from that. That if they're not bothered, it's because they're seeing that something else is coming along that will replace it, that they see as ultimately better. And it probably is for them. Is it going to be better for you and me? No, probably not.
But we've heard before, and I hate to be brutal, but when people talk about... Be brutal. When people talk about no blood for oil, look, the reality is oil has made our society incredibly wealthy. It's what living standards have been pushed up by. And so the idea that you would fight for cheap oil, the idea that you would work towards cheap oil is a good thing. And look, I'm not saying that fossil fuels are perfect, but I'm saying that I live a significantly better life than my grandparents. Yeah. And actually, you are looking potentially at my niece and nephews having a worse lifestyle than me because of green technology.
Well, absolutely. And the Industrial Revolution, I've said this many times, but I'll make the point again. Life expectancy has doubled. It's doubled since the Industrial Revolution for the vast majority of people. Having said that, these particular people that are making these decisions, you know, they're going to live to a nice ripe old age. I mean, there was a photograph of Microsoft, Bill Gates's house and everything the other day. Not one wind turbine, not one solar panel, not one heat pump. I mean, you know, come on, surely if it's so wonderful that one of the most wealthy men in the world would have all of it.
And he's got all the technology, hasn't he?
He's got all the technology, and he knows that oil and gas, electricity works.
I think it's fair to say he's got all the gear and no idea.
All the gear and no idea.
Okay, talking of someone who's got absolutely no idea.
Oh my God.
A nursing professor has now said that we should prioritise dealing with climate change over actual patient care. Yes, that's right. There's been a significant problem, as you know, with nurses going on strike. But now Professor Charlotte McArdle has said that climate change is the biggest public health emergency, and we need to see climate change as important, even more important potentially than patient safety. But once again, the idea that a nurse doesn't want to nurse but she wants to do climate change, it just shows the zealotry. It shows the zealotry, but it also completely underlines the point that I've been making continuously, in that it's nothing to do with the planet. It's completely ideological. Yes. And it's ideological. Of course, somebody that's an active trade union member, someone that's working in the public sector would love climate change, because it's nothing to do with climate change. It's an ideology, a leftist ideology that's very dangerous. So yeah, that makes complete sense to me. It's shifting on the surface. But Professor McArdle is in charge of patient safety, and what worries me is if she's running around. I mean, I've never met the woman, so I don't know, but she's running around conferences, effectively saying that climate change is more important, really, than wider patient safety. Things like MRSA, things like proper testing of vaccines, and all that sort of thing. That just shows you the danger here. Now, I wonder whether Professor McArdle is a villain or not. Do you think it's possible that all of them now just feel obliged to say this and to engage in climate change, because otherwise they'll be in real trouble? They're pushing it. I mean, you know, my granddad would have got in real trouble with this, because he would have said this is why you shouldn't let girls go to university. Oh, because look at this absolute twaddle that's coming out, Professor Charlotte McArdle. I mean, yeah, it's nonsense, isn't it? It's nonsense. But again, on the surface of it, you'd say this. Why would this go with this? But then it does if you look at the broader picture, because it's about taxing, it's about control, it's about limiting human behaviour. It really is. But in her speech on Wednesday, she said that climate change was having an incalculable toll on human health and well-being, and I'm not sure that's true. I think it isn't. Look, whatever people say about climate change, and you have your view, other people will have different views. Yeah. Whatever you say. The pushing up of cost of heating and electricity to ordinary families, that is putting an incalculable toll on health and well-being. It's not carbon in the air that's doing it. Now, whether you believe that carbon causes climate change or not doesn't make any difference. As we sit here today, it's the cost to ordinary people of energy that's causing problems. Energy, and of course, if the cost of energy goes up, then the cost of everything goes up. The cost of transport, absolutely everything goes up, and it pushes inflation up. The whole kit and caboodle, you know, and then you have mental health, not just physical health problems from being too cold, or from women not being able to have their fridges on to keep baby milk safe because of the electricity cost. You've got mental health problems, people that can't afford to pay their electric bill, their gas bill, old people stoically sitting there, you know, freezing to death. I mean, on your show, you've had loads of callers ringing that make your heart, you know, they make you cry. Yeah, on my television show a couple of days ago, we were talking about a chap who literally he couldn't heat it. He could heat his house, and he could have £2 a day to eat. And you know, he just went through all this, and he said he had to go to a soup kitchen. This is a carer as well. Yeah, this bloke had been a miner, and then he'd worked on North Sea oil, so he should be all right. Yeah, he worked hard his whole life. Absolutely. That's supposed to be the point, isn't it? You're supposed to live in a country where, you know, even if you have quite modest aspirations, that they can be fulfilled if you do the right thing. That's, you know, he's done the right thing. He's having to go to a soup kitchen. Absolutely. That broke my heart, actually. Oh, it was sad, and of course it's humiliating for somebody like that. Anyway, young people now are suffering from significant. What's wrong with them now? Young people now are suffering from significant mental health problems as a result of the threats being put in them about climate change. Apparently, all of this talk of the world being destroyed, all of this talk of communities being ripped apart, all this talk of extreme weather events and sudden earthquakes, floods, and all sorts of things that people say, and fear of death, apparently that is now causing young people to be extremely concerned. And
Oh,
that's a report.
Who would have thought that? That if you get a doomsday cults on, making impressions on young children constantly, that it's going to give them mental health. Wow, that's a shock, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a fairly serious report. And it looks particularly at the issue that adolescents obviously are going through quite a traumatic period in their life.
Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, even if they've got the perfect life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what we're now talking about is adding to it. I mean, I have to say, I felt that this "you'll die of old age, I'll die of climate change," which we can all agree is not true. But hang on a second, young people are being force-fed that.
I know.
And without being funny, it's easy for us to sit here and ridicule these young people for this. But actually, I think it's a significant problem, Lois.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter came home from school, last school before she started high school. And she said, "Oh, mummy," she said, "oh, we've got to do a dance about David Attenborough and polar bears." She was really embarrassed about it because exactly.
That would be my one.
But all her friends were like getting all emotional doing the dance. Lola was so embarrassed.
I'll tell you one thing. I don't mean to be rude, Lois, but if your child is going to a school where they're telling you to do a David Attenborough polar bear related, let's not forget, illustrative dance routine, right? That is bad.
It is bad. Yeah, especially as it actually cost us money to send us there. But the thing is, she knew it was all nonsense, but her friends didn't, and that's it. That's the serious point you're making.
But I've had people that I've interviewed before today where, when it comes to even things like trans story time, when it comes to things like climate change, there are people who send their children to private school who believe, notes the word believe, that they are being insulated from some of the stupidity.
They are to a large extent, but not as much as it. I mean, if Lola had gone to a state junior school, primary school, it would have been 100 times worse.
Really?
100 times worse. And the reason that we chose a Roman Catholic girls' school for her, a secondary school, was because we had a chat with the head teacher. She said they do the absolute minimum that they can get away with in terms of the whole gender ideology part of the personal health and social education stuff. So yeah, but it all fits in together. And isn't it interesting that we're putting that in the same camp as as communist ideology, trade unions, climate change, gender ideology? It should all be disparate groups, yet they all seem to be intrinsically linked. That's interesting as a narrative.
But there was always the theory about Ken Livingston and the Socialist Action Group that what they would do was a small number of Marxists would attempt to take control of all sorts of different sort of cause groups, and everybody was fighting to smash the system.
Right.
But one person thought they were doing it for gay rights, one person thought they were doing it for trans rights.
Someone else was doing it for newts.
Yeah, absolutely. Hitler was evil. He was a Zionist. One day.
Sorry, but what's that got to do with newts?
I've got no idea. The minute I think of newts, I think of Ken Livingston.
I was on TV with him once, actually. He seemed a bit confused when we were in the green room. He wouldn't shake my hand, yet when he did a selfie with me, he almost sat me on his lap. Yeah, and I thought, why don't you shake someone's hand, but you're putting me on your lap?
I mean, Julia HartleyBrewer said to him once, she said, "Look, can you get through a whole interview without mentioning Hitler?" And he said, and he responded with the following comment: "When Mr. H was dictator of Germany." Literally, just absolutely obsessed. But also the other thing,
I must admit, you're a little bit like that. Not with Hitler, but with Churchill and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, look, I like.
No, that's good.
Look, I'm patriotic for Britain.
No, I think
Livingston's
it's
patriotic for Germany.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, you're on the right side.
But of course, the interesting thing about this report, Lois, is not that it criticises the attacks on young people by saying they're all going to die from climate change. It actually says the solution to mental health problems in schools is for us to abolish oil. Right, which is, let's be clear, a very interesting jump.
So hang on a minute. So basically, actually, every single article really that we're looking at is story, solution, abolish oil.
Yeah, I believe that is going to become a theme.
Come on, let's bring on the next one.
But also, it does make me laugh the way that they said that Bangladesh flooded recently. Yes, that's right. It's a floodplain. Anyway, okay. Okay, Brits now are calling for additional taxes on oil and gas companies that are going to put up
more taxes. No.
put up the cost significantly to you, the consumer. Lois, I find this depressing because the reality is we've talked about the fact that people are really struggling in to pay their bills, but 78% of people in Britain think it's unfair that oil and gas companies make a profit, and they want to force them to take responsibility for the climate change they cause. So what I can see in that is just essentially whatever bill, whatever left-wing government decides will be handed. That is, once again, it reminds me of that Phil Schreiner. Do you remember the guy who used to sue British soldiers for fighting in Iraq, and he used to sue them individually?
Oh, I know, I didn't know.
And his aim was to stop war by literally making it impossible to join the army. Exactly right. I think this is a similar thing.
It is. And the oil and gas companies, I mean, if they're not making a profit, then that means they can't plough money back into exploration. And ultimately, the more exploration, the more sources of oil and gas we have, the lower the cost. It's actually net zero policies that are pushing up prices. But it'd be interesting to see the phrasing of the question, because it's done as I don't know if it's YouGov, but one of those kind of companies. You know, if you get asked a question, are you evil or not? You know, like it's basically that is the.
Although I think there's a critical detail here that we are seeing more and more and more. Note who did the poll, Christian Aid. Now, that is an organisation that's supposed to be supporting charitable functions around the world. And instead, people donating to Christian Aid are actually paying for you to do research.
Yeah, I think charitable functions is probably the right word, but we're talking more like parties, black tie.
Yeah. What about Lois? The fact that BP made profits of £4 billion recently. Shell apparently had profits of 7.6 billion in the first 3 months of this year. I mean, are they getting excessive? I'll tell you my theory, and I might be wrong on this, that what happens is because of the whole green agenda, the price of energy gets pushed up, and therefore they're able to sell it for a higher price. If we didn't have the green technology, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I know, but if you actually break down the figures and actually look at it properly, you'll find that most of that is not the domestic actual part of the market, because that's very fixed. It will be on foreign oil and gas exploration, which you know, all around the world, because it's very, very small, the actual bit of that profit that comes from the domestic market.
And of course, there was a whole issue in Ukraine and Russia, and the fact that Russia was no longer able to pump much of its, well, it was able to pump, it wasn't able to sell much of its oil.
Especially when pipelines are being blown up.
Okay, well, Sadiq Khan has succeeded apparently by persuading more Londoners than anywhere else in the country to be concerned about climate change. That's according to the Office for National Statistics. Apparently, an opinion survey by them from April to May 2023 shows that over the past 12 months, 64% of adults in Britain said they were somewhat or very worried about the impact of climate change. Look, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's reasonable, given what people are being force-fed, that they're going to believe it. Well,
absolutely. But also there are actually more people in London than in other regions of the country. But that's just
no, you can't get away with that. Okay, it's a percentage.
Right, percentage. Okay, well, let's talk about percentages then, Andre. So my organisation, Car 26, we did polling that showed that 58% 18 months ago of people that expressed an opinion wanted a net zero referendum. It was 62% 4 months ago, but over 50% of Londoners wanted a net zero referendum.
Really?
So, you know, and actually a lot of young people, you would not believe that. You would not believe that from reading these kind of woke stories. It doesn't get any more woke nowadays in the Evening Standard.
No.
I mean, they make the Guardian look a bit right-wing, you know. So, I'm not sure how much I believe that. And also, as you say, even if it's true, it depends on how the question's phrased, but even if it's true, if you're being force-fed stuff constantly, but as I say, 62% of those expressed opinion in the most recent polling, YouGov polling for my organisation, wanted the net zero referendum. You don't want a referendum if you want the status quo.
Yeah, I saw the Extinction Rebellion. I mean, what I thought was extraordinary about them, they were talking about the fact that the reason why the cost of living crisis has gone up is the cost of oil. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, of course, what's happening is people are seeing their bills going up. It's because of the green technology, but they believe it's because of oil and gas.
Yeah, but oil and gas prices would go up if you limit exploration.
Yeah.
You know, yes. Oh, anyway.
It's also interesting that in poorer parts of the country, the northeast, those figures dramatically come down.
Needs must when the devil drives. I mean, you know, if you're literally driving in the rural parts of the country, in London, everyone who lives in London, especially very young people, think that the rest of the country is exactly like it. They think that it's as diverse, which it isn't. They think that the public transport is as good, which it isn't.
No.
You know, they think that everywhere is like London. No, only London is like London.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hollywood star Natalie Portman has said that people should no longer buy new clothes. They should travel by train and they should use electric cars and they should not go on holiday. Oh, and of course, repair their handbags.
Oh,
look,
really? Oh, what, repair her? I bet it's a £50,000 Hermes handbag that you pop it in and they repair it for free. I bet it isn't from Primark or C&A.
But she's described her lifestyle as frugal. Do you believe that she lives a frugal? But isn't it one rule for them and another rule for us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're all equal. Some of us are more equal than others. I don't think I can be completely unbiased on this woman.
Why?
Because every boyfriend I've ever had has fancied her and I hate her.
Is she like a better looking version of you? Okay, let's move on.
Swiftly on.
But she is somebody who considers herself to be a climate
activist.
She's
right on. She's like the girl from Harry Potter, you know, bite the hand that feeds you. I mean, she's modelled for fashion brands her whole life, this woman. She's modelled for Christian Dior. She's modelled for all the big fashion houses at various times, perfumes, things like that. And now she's saying, don't buy any fashion.
But Lois, on a serious note, what about the issue of fast fashion? I mean, there is a lot of clothes that now go in the bin, don't they?
There's a middle ground. Absolutely right. Yeah, fast fashion is as bad as the whole. You know, a lot of the factories. I'm not accusing any particular brands, but you know, you've got very young people working in them. People working long hours for very small amounts of money. We would consider it slavery in this country. It's not considered slavery in its own country, but it's like the cobalt and everything that's mined for our phones and for the electric cars. You know, people turn a blind eye. But yeah, you're right. People should buy decent clothes, but it's all right if you can afford it. Yeah, that's right. Isn't it? It's all right.
A lot of people are in real poverty. I mean, when people are paying £100 a week for electricity and gas, that is a significant chunk of money. I mean,
but they can get leggings for £2 in Primark.
I've got to be honest with you, and I don't want to sound like an elitist, but obviously I present a TV show. I live in a fairly wealthy area. I can't understand how ordinary people are getting by at the moment with all of this. Because you know, if you're earning, say, £30,000 a year and you're bringing up a family, which is meant to be a good wage.
It should be a good wage.
And it's just not anymore.
No, it's not. But then the reason that, unfortunately, what Gordon Brown did by putting everybody onto tax credits is he got everybody used to the whole concept of having your income topped up and being dependent on the state. So people are earning a smaller amount, but then they are getting support as well. But they shouldn't have to have the support. The oil and gas prices should be cheap enough that a normal wage with no government handout is enough. You know, you should be able to buy a house or rent a property with one income, so that if one of the parents, I prefer it to be the mum, but it doesn't matter, decided to stay at home with the kid, it would be fine. There'd be enough money. It should be like that, but it's not, and it's deliberate, absolutely deliberate. Yeah,
I find it pretty despicable because you just see time and time again, there's just a lack of care for ordinary people.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Environment Agency has said that there will be droughts across England as a result of climate change. It's failing to recognise the real problem with water shortages at the moment, which is, of course, that Nick Clegg
shut down all the reservoirs and delayed building of new ones. Yeah,
and we've got 10 million more people living in the United Kingdom.
More people.
I mean, look,
we're building on floodplains.
This is another great example of how dishonest people can be, because everybody can see with any sense what the issue is regarding water shortages. It's poor infrastructure made worse by the Nick Clegg thing, and it's also the fact that more people are using that infrastructure. You know, it's like anything. If I get a pizza and you and I share it, then we'll have a decent amount of food. If we share it between 40 people, we won't have much.
Yeah, and if somebody cancels the delivery, there isn't a pizza in the first place, is there? No, this is another nonsense story, and I bet right at the end of the story, solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, of course, the other thing is what they're trying to do is put up the cost of water as well. I mean, I find Ofwat one of the most disgusting organisations.
Ofwat is a terrible name.
Oh, it's just terrible. But it costs 20 million a year for that regulator. What they do is they regularly bring in hosepipe bans rather than dealing with production. Right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
And leaks.
Can you imagine going to McDonald's and them going, right, well, you've got to pay for your dinner. Oh, but I'm afraid not only we're not going to give you your dinner, it's illegal for you to have the dinner. Right? That's what a hosepipe ban is. You have to pay for the water, but it's literally become illegal to even take it. I find that an extraordinary thought. But time and time again, those hosepipe bans are pushing us into believing that the problem is us.
Yeah, and the problem, and the solution is less living, is less life, is less going out, is less working, is less trade, is less driving. No, the solution is that your government builds reservoirs and manages the water companies properly. They don't. You know, the solution with all of this stuff is, for example, that we have our own independent sources of energy, but we're not. You know, that's the solution is not, oh, we must do less. It's that we should be doing more, but more of the right things.
Right, get ready for this one,
oh,
guys.
No, oh my
Climate
God.
Climate activists have claimed that Hussein Bolt will benefit from climate change because he is taller and apparently he will have access to a better quality of air, whereas shorter sports stars will struggle and no longer be able to. I mean, this is just bananas, isn't it?
I don't even know what to say to this one. I really don't. I mean, apart from the fact that the reason they've changed it from global warming to climate change in recent years is because actually the climate stopped. It actually had been the warming for 8 years, which is why the phrase is now climate change, not global warming. So, I mean, I don't even know what this story is.
So, okay, so Ryan Calsby, who is a professor of biological sciences at Dartmouth College, analysed nearly 200 contestants. And this is interesting, said that actually taller athletes did better, which is a major surprise. But what's amazing is, of course, when you read down...
because they've got longer legs?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean...
But you read this original report, and actually, there's nothing really that says that this has anything to do with climate change.
No.
They've just managed to elbow that in.
But Andre, what is the solution at the end of the article?
Just stop oil.
Just stop oil. Oh, wow.
But
I've been on the same course this lot.
But I mean, when you're starting to say that Lionel Messi and Bruce Lee are short superstars, they're going to have significant problems in the future, whereas their taller rivals will be better. I mean, it's just
the fact that one of them's dead. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest challenges he's going to have in the future.
dig him up, he'll be fine. There's life in the old girl yet.
Death, the ultimate issue. With that,
but I mean, it's now got so desperate that that's what we are. That's what we're now talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about the height of athletes having an effect or being part of the climate change agenda, and people I just can't understand how anybody would believe it.
No, I know, I can't either. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. But there you go. That's the world we're living in at the moment.
So apparently, if you are taller, then climate change is going to benefit you.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
Closer to the sun. No, you need to be shorter because then you're further away from the sun, so you get less burnt when there's no ozone or whatever.
Oh yeah, where's that gone?
Oh, the ozone.
The ozone layer.
That's gone.
You mustn't use your deodorant. It's room
CFCs.
heater. Do you remember? Don't use your deodorant. We don't hear anything about that anymore. What's it fixed?
No, apparently it's fixed. Apparently it was all good.
Do you think it's because I didn't use that aerosol in 1988?
That's right.
That would be it. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. If you're talking about problems with that, the fact that secondary school boys stopped wearing links. I mean, that was a danger to society, wasn't it?
That was one of the worst things.
That was absolutely filthy. Okay, so The Economist has called for a new world order to deal with climate change, which is going to prioritise security and climate change away from economics and the ability to raise people out of poverty. Look, Lois, this frustrates me a significant amount because it's so easy. I mean, this new world order thing, I don't care about this.
But they're actually calling it this.
They're calling it in The Economist.
Yeah.
But what amazes me is the way that we are saying, let's stop economic growth. Yeah. Let's commit people to poverty. Let's forget about people's opportunity in lives.
Well, they're seeing it as an opportunity for them to create a new economic structure, which is not based on, on capitalism. I'm sorry, that's the only way that you can really look at it like that. I can't think of any other way to break it down.
I completely agree, and I think there is a significant danger. Look, what they're doing is they're effectively capitalism has become now consumption, hasn't it?
Yeah.
They've forgotten about the issue of choice in the market. They've forgotten about the fact that people will have more options to do more stuff.
Survival of the fittest.
Absolutely.
And, the Darwinian aspects.
And it's become about that, and I'm just really worried that actually now effectively we're saying capitalism can't work because the god of the skies has taken it away from us. It's a paganistic anti-capitalist religion.
It certainly is. And as it has been a common theme in all of the stories that we've been talking about today, Andre, in that it's all to do with taxing more, less personal control, less personal freedom, and no capitalism.
Yeah, absolutely. To what extent do you think these people are sort of quasi-religious zealots, and to what extent do you think that they are just obsessed? They're just obsessed with destroying capitalism.
I think that you've
got
both. You've got it all in there. You've got an unholy trinity of crap. Of lunatics.
Of absolute lunatics.
Yeah.
Well, look, those are the big stories of the week. We're going to be putting them on social media as well as this show. We're going to be back next week at the same time in the same place. Lois, look, are you depressed this week?
No, I'm not depressed this week because we are fighting the good fight and we're going to win because good always triumphs.
And also, somebody gave you a glass of champagne before the show. So you're in a good mood like that. Okay, look, please do subscribe to the Car26 YouTube channel. Also, we've got all of our social media that you've got to join in the conversation. We read all of the comments and we'll get back to you on those. Until next week, goodbye.